Hi, everyone. This is Terrence Cheng, Chancellor of the Connecticut State Colleges and University System. I'm the host of this podcast, Office Hours. Through candid discussions, Office Hours will explore the intersection of education, leadership, and economic growth. We will hear from state, higher education, business, and industry leaders, and students and faculty who will share valuable perspectives that inspire and empower listeners on their educational and professional journeys as we delve into the key issues impacting higher education across Connecticut. Joining me today is State Representative Corey Paris. Representative Paris represents Stamford in the Connecticut General Assembly and serves as Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee and is a member of the Education and Higher Education and Employment Advancement Committees. Representative Paris has dedicated his career to public service and community activism and currently serves as the Chief Impact Officer at Person to Person, which supports families in Fairfield County as they move towards stability. Representative Paris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate being here.
Well, you are a graduate of Western Connecticut State University, so let's start there.
Yes.
What inspired you to go to Western?
Well, a proud graduate of the Western Connecticut State University, and I think more importantly, I ask myself every morning what inspired me to go to school there. I was participating in a fellowship program in Washington, D.C. with the organization People for the American Way. Mm-hmm. It's an organization which was founded by Norman Lear, the late great TV producer and social justice activist. And so I was focused for those few months and with the Center for Progressive Leadership. So both organizations, I was focused over those few months to work with inspiring young people all over the country on their blueprints for social justice and how they were going to take these plans back after working with experts in the training and facilitator fields, taking those blueprints back, implementing them in their communities, and creating sustainable and impactful change. And I had a friend who said to me, "You might really like Connecticut." And I said, absolutely not. I was born in the South. I'm a Midwestern boy. And so he told me, come up and visit. I came up to visit and I fell in love with it.
Wow.
And I think 11 months later, after I completed the program, had gone back to Kansas for a while, he was saying to me, you got to transfer to a new school. Have you decided where you're going to go? Mm-hmm. And I said, KU's a natural fit. Mm-hmm. It's in my backyard. And he said, no, why don't you look at UConn. Went to UConn, visited, and it was like more of Kansas with more cows. So he said, well, if you're going back down to New York City, which is where I was staying during that vacation, he said, you should stop by WestConn and check it out.
Yep.
Stop by, remember the admissions counselors that I met with, applied, accepted 3 weeks later, and my grandmother's cried nonstop for the next few months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But no one's regretting the work you have done and since you've come. Well, what did you study at Western?
Political science.
Okay.
Political science with an emphasis in electoral politics. They allowed for me to kind of create this minor, and I also had a real deep focus in communications. And so it was really exciting because I was not just a number, I was an individual. I knew all of my professors by name. They were quite helpful. And my friends and comrades and colleagues at that time, we're all best friends to this day.
That's great.
Yeah.
And everyone should know that when you walk down certain hallways of Western and you see pictures of students that they proudly put up there are pictures of Representative Paris in his student days, looking vibrant and youthful as ever.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting a commission on that.
I'm not, which is unfortunate.
Well,
but
don't hold your breath.
We need to expend more money to the system so
there you go.
Get new pictures.
There you go. So we're happy to use your image gratis at this point, and very proudly, of course. So talk to us a little bit about, who are some of the faculty and staff who really made a difference while you were at Western?
Yeah, I think Western, what was really interesting about my time there is I was an independent student. So I put myself through school, had no financial ties or real relationships with my family. Bit of a challenging period of my life during that time, but I was determined to graduate and to really forge my own way, my own path. And so there are two professors in particular for very different reasons that I think made such a huge impact on my life. First being Dr. Christopher Cook, who was the head of the honors program, and I had taken one of his classes, and he said to me, "You don't fool me. You're mediocre at best."
Oh.
And I remember him saying that to me in a classroom full of people. And I thought to myself, I'll show him mediocre at best.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, it was kind of that notion of, I felt like I was the outsider coming into this upper echelon of higher academia. And everything that I did from that point on, I remember saying, you're mediocre at best. That would play back in my head. Everything that I did from that point was not to prove to him, but to prove to myself that it was not mediocrity that I was producing, but it was one, survival, and two, I was surpassing the expectations of even those around me.
Sure. Can I just ask real quick, though? So was that like a Jedi mind trick that, he was trying to pull on you by challenging you? Or was that something that maybe goes on a student evaluation of a faculty member at some point where you say, hey, that maybe wasn't so cool?
I think it's maybe, for me, maybe that wasn't so cool.
Yeah.
For him today, I think given, all the heights and levels in which I've been able to accomplish this far, I think he would say there was some Jedi mind trick. But to each their own.
Okay. Yeah. Well, teaching has changed in the past X number of years since you were an undergrad. So that's interesting. But please go on. You said there was another faculty member.
Yeah, Dr. Leslie Lindemeyer. And she still teaches at Western. And what was really interesting about the class I had taken with her was an independent study that allowed for me to trace my genealogy and focus and do a whole class on my family history, which I thought was really cool. And it's a pretty cool family background in history. In fact, there's a museum on our family in Kansas that focuses on how we were one of the 3 founding families of this small Black historic township called Quindaro.
Okay.
And Dick Gregory has done plays on this place. And we helped to lead a lot of other enslaved Americans out of slavery into freedom in Kansas.
Wow.
And the space is still up. It's a historic space, and it's really interesting to be able to study that.
Right. And so you discovered that through this coursework, or did you already know this?
I had already known it. We had so many more resources that were made available that I found out so much more through the coursework.
Right.
Like my great-grandfather and his history with losing his parents, and his mother was a white woman, and his father was an indentured slave, and he was viewed as mulatto, but then never knew his parents.
Wow.
But yet built this whole, life for himself with 9 kids and multiple grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So tracing that history back, I think, brought a lot of solace.
That's really incredible. One of the things, so you've already talked a little bit about how Western has kind of influenced you or impacted you. But when you think about where you are today, you're not towards the end of career. I think you're much more towards the beginning and the middle of your career, right? But already you've achieved a great deal. So talk to us a little bit more about what are some of those other X factors that maybe developed from your experience at Western that have helped you today?
Well, I think Western definitely built a sense of confidence as an independent, maverick-like thinker that I didn't necessarily, I think I possess, but I didn't use very much prior to my time going there. And I think I was able to be a critical thinker, and certainly I was able to figure out who I was as an individual through my time at Western. Yeah. And those are things that oftentimes can't be taught.
Right.
They have to be learned.
Yeah.
But I think the environments in which you learn them in really mold and shape a person for the future.
You've shared with me in the past that, you were a student leader. I think you were the head of the student government.
Yeah, I was president.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that you used to have interactions with a previous president of Western. So clearly you were not afraid to use your voice.
Not at all.
Even as a student, you were exercising that already.
That's right. And it was a showdown where we wanted to plant a new holiday tree on campus. And we had a local Danbury woman who had this big 30-foot tree, it feels like, at her home. She was donating it to us. And the university administration said, you can't take that tree. We're not paying for it. And I said, I don't need you to pay for it. I've got my own budget. So it was this budget showdown between me and Dr. Schmatter at the time. And I said, I'll pay for the tree. And he didn't stop me. But it was, I hate to say this, it was a forecast of what was to come in the legislature of these showdowns that we now see on such important issues.
Yeah. Well, clearly you were sharpening your skills already.
That's for sure.
So you recently started your position as Chief Impact Officer at Person to Person. And Person to Person supports families from Fairfield County that are trying to move towards stability. Stability is something that influences so many of our college students. Right. So how have you seen our colleges and universities support our students' needs? Are there things that you've observed that maybe we're doing pretty well? Are there things that you would say, hey, you all need to do a better job with this?
Yeah, well, I think it's incumbent upon all of us across the state, private and public entities and governmental and non-governmental entities, to be able to support our students in their academic experience. And I think all of the wraparound services that we provide are critical to the development of our students, therefore strengthening our workforce post their grad career. And so for me, I think we're doing a very good job of offering mental health services where we can, which has become hugely and keenly aware of on many of the experts in the academic field since COVID. In addition to that, food insecurity is still a major player in terms of what students are missing.
Yes.
Nearly, I think some 36 or 35% of our students are food insecure at the college level. And I was one of those students. I was food insecure in college as well. I was thinking about whether or not I was going to buy a book for class or if I was going to, get a meal other than ramen.
Right.
And so I know that this has been further exacerbated, I think, by COVID, but also due to the lack of resources that are made available at the institutions.
Yeah.
And so I think it's incumbent upon us with nonprofit organizations like the Goodwills or like Person to Person.
Right.
And Fairfield County Community Foundation in that area to be able to step up and try to offer services.
Absolutely. I think food insecurity is one of those concerns and needs that we are working very hard. Every single one of our campuses has a food pantry, but the work, it's just not enough.
It's not.
Right? It's just not enough. We have to continue to push and do better. And we've obviously spoken about that with you and your fellow legislators about how we can continue to try to provide more services there. You've clearly dedicated your life at this point to public service. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the moments or those inspirations where, it clicked, right? And you said, this is the path I want to go down.
Yeah. Well, the family I grew up in, I think, didn't make it very easy. I grew up in an intensely competitive family. And it was almost like everything that we committed ourselves to doing, it had to be done in the name of excellence. There was nothing below that. And so, my grandmothers, I speak of them so affectionately now because I don't have to spend much time with them every day, but they were really hard on me.
Right.
And my grandmother always had an expectation of me where she would say, you can't do what everyone else does. There is something that is expected of you that will require you to rise to greatness and to be uncomfortable. And so for me, I think growing up, knowing that there are so many people in need and that I've been afforded such a blessed existence that I need to be able to help out and be the voice for those who are voiceless, I think that's always kind of been the call to arms for me.
Yeah.
But I think certainly having this privileged existence in the beginning lent itself to understanding what it actually means to be in survival mode once I had entered college and I was really on my own.
Right. I love what you said there about kind of the pressure you receive as a young person growing up and maybe saying, hey, maybe I just want to relax a little bit, or maybe I can not go 100 miles an hour. Obviously, the pressure that they put on you and those expectations have clearly made a big difference. So, but that led to obviously a decision to run for office.
Yeah.
So when did you run for office, and maybe talk to us a little bit about that process as well?
I was thinking about this the other day. It's been a very long political career and I hadn't even realized it. So when I was in high school, actually, I was class president every year except for senior year. I remember that I was the State Board of Education representative for the state of Nevada. So I was thinking about K-12 education from a really early age and representing students' voices early on. And then when I gone back to Kansas, I was a precinct committee man in that elected office, and that was pretty cool. So I was 18 when that had taken place. And so moving here, I didn't want to run for office anytime soon. I wanted to travel the world and have fun. And there were some life challenges around me at that time. And there was a seat that had opened up, and I was being encouraged by many supporters and colleagues and community members to run for the seat in Stanford, being vacated by Senator Miller. And I was 28 at the time. And I still had a lot of life to live, and I thought I could travel, but I also know that these moments don't always present themselves.
That's right.
As often as we would like. So I took the chance in.
Yeah, and I do remember that because, again, I was down in Stanford at the time, and I remember then Representative Miller had announced that she was going to run for Senate, and there was a seat, and your name started to percolate right away, and here we are. That's pretty remarkable, and I love the fact that you took advantage of that opportunity, right?
And I think it's not only taking advantage, I think it was, again, I kept wavering on the decision, and my grandmother said, once again, as she has always said my entire life, you're called to do more for others because you have so much already.
So you are the vice chair of the legislature's Appropriations Committee, and you're a member of the Education and Higher Education and Employment Advancement Committee. So tell us some of the top issues that are on the docket for those committees right now.
Yeah, well, I think in higher ed right now, I know that there's been a big push to end legacy admissions across the state. And I know that is in response to some of the affirmative action cases that have happened at the federal level. And I honestly believe that what we see out of those policies could be helpful for families across the state of Connecticut. I also think that there's a little concern around that because for many communities of color that have worked so hard to penetrate Ivy League institutions, now their kids actually had a chance. And if that affects them, I think that that's a concern for many communities. But nonetheless, we have to rise to answer to some of these challenges that we're facing on the federal level that need to be fixed on the state level. In addition to that, I think it goes without saying, certainly from the appropriation standpoint, we have to figure out ways to further fund our university system.
Hallelujah.
But I think it's critical, and certainly as an alum of this system and understanding the nuances of how that plays such a part in our workforce and the stability of our state as well, it's critical for us to solve that crisis. And I think when we're able to really put money towards helping to support the mitigation plan that's being placed by those in charge at the system level, we'll see that there will be a turnaround over the next few years, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate all the advocacy and the hard work that you and your fellow legislators put in. And again, not just listening to us, but hearing the concerns and the challenges that we're going through. Obviously, that's a big challenge. You are such a proud alum, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that you speak about that so boisterously and publicly. So many of our students are Connecticut residents, and they come from Connecticut, and then they will end up staying here to live and to work. So maybe just from a legislative perspective, from a citizenry perspective, talk to us a little bit about not just how CSCU, but all of higher education in Connecticut can be a part of the state's growth, the state's evolution, and so on. Well,
I mean, my most controversial opinion about this is that if any of the CSCUs were Division I athletic programs, we wouldn't have this conversation right now. And so I think that that's part of the problem. And I think we place emphasis and value around the wrong critical key indicators of higher ed. And so for me, certainly as always rooting for the underdog, I truly believe that in 10 to 15 to 20 years, if the state of our university system is strong, the state of our state economy and quality of life will be equally as strong. And so I think if we start having those conversations when they're not mandated because of intangible assets to the university, I think we'll be able to see far more results, and we're supporting future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, and you know from being in Danbury, being at Western, that so many of those students without Western Connecticut State or without their neighborhood community college or regional community college, they're just not going to go to school.
You're absolutely right.
They're not going to travel from Danbury over to New Britain. Right. They're not going to go from New Britain to Willimantic and so on.
And I think in addition to that, we have to think about the employees of the system.
Correct.
And so this system, I think, is the last great hope of a constituency of employees that have been here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
Yes.
whereas we see the new trend is you stay in a job for 1 to 2 years to gain more,
Yes.
salary and earning power. And that's not been the case here. We
Right.
owe it to them.
Yes.
And they've dedicated their entire careers to supporting our students
Yeah.
and families. So we do owe it to this system to be
Yeah.
able to salvage it in some way.
Thank you for that, because I do think that the folks who actually drive the machine every single day, the faculty, the staff, the people who are on the front lines, they deserve that level of security and, frankly, dignity in the workplace. So that's
Absolutely.
really key. Okay, so let's do some rapid fire questions. So what was the first bill you passed?
Ooh, that is a good one. It was financial literacy. It was
Okay.
a mandate to teach financial literacy in high schools in order to graduate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that one's a trick one because that was a few days before the second bill I passed. So
Okay. What was that about?
the second one was a student loan reimbursement program for our college students and residents.
Interesting. So I have to drill into this one, because both of those, your first two bills that you passed, very student focused, student centered, and even now, sometimes when we speak, you'll talk to me about legislation that's being worked on, and it is very student centered, very student success driven. So maybe just kind of talk about that a little.
So quickly on the financial literacy, I mean, for me and for so many other people, money is not talked about at home. Either because you have it and it's just not kosher, or you don't have it and you don't want to create this culture of worry.
Right.
And so I think it's really important for young people to, before they graduate, learn about credit cards, learn about car debt and car loans, learn about student loans, because Connecticut holds the fifth highest amount of student loan debt in the country, $19.8 billion.
I did not know that. Wow.
So it's really big and incumbent upon us to be able to try to put that money back into our economy somehow. And then on the student loan forgiveness, we have so many people from the ages of 22 up to 77, if not higher, that are experiencing student loan debt.
Yeah.
And it's keeping people trapped in unhappy marriages. It's keeping people at jobs that they don't want to be at. It's keeping them from being able to afford childcare, buying homes, starting businesses. This program says if you do 50 hours of community service, you attended a public school or a private school or a trades program, and you completed the program, or you left in good standing, and you pay up to $5,000 on your student loan each year, we will reimburse you up to that $5,000 each year on that student loan for up to 4 years, giving $20,000 in disposable income.
Right.
But that takes that money and puts it right back into our state economy.
Right. That's exactly right. And it is a closed loop investment.
Absolutely.
Right? It's good. Like you said, it goes right back into the neighborhoods. So what's the best thing about being a state rep, and what's maybe not the greatest thing about being a state rep?
Best thing about being a state rep is that we're very big on titles in our family. We jokingly call my grandfather the Colonel because he runs the family house like a barracks. And he was an Army sergeant for a long time. And so it's going back home and having my cousins being forced to call me the Honorable or Representative, especially when they picked on me so much as a kid.
I love that.
And the worst thing about being a state rep is that I often run into my constituents in the most awkward situations. Recently, I was trying to buy deodorant at Stop and Shop because I had run out, and there was an elderly woman who came over to talk to me about picking up her trash. Unfortunately, that's a municipal issue, not a state issue, but she bent my ear for a longer half of about 25 minutes.
There you go.
You can't go shopping freely.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, once I was sick and I was in a pharmacy at maybe 10:30 at night trying to pick up a prescription, and I'm wearing a hoodie and sweats, and I look like I've just been hit by a truck 3 times, and someone says to me, "Chancellor Cheng?" And I said, "Oh, hey." And I did my best to be courteous, but it was not a good look for that day. Okay, so what is your favorite holiday?
Believe it or not, I have 2. It's Easter and the 4th of July.
Interesting.
Yeah. Easter, because we used to have really competitive Easter egg hunts in my great-grandparents' yards.
Theme here with
it is, yeah.
Paris.
If you saw me at our kickball game yesterday, you would know.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. Okay.
And then the 4th of July, I'm a summer baby, so I was born in August, so the 4th of July is a month and a day before my birthday, and it was just always fun to get together with family members and have fireworks and barbecue. So those are my two favorite holidays.
Awesome. When you're not working, do you have a favorite hobby or a favorite way to kick back?
I am an avid vinyl collector. Record vinyl collector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Old school?
Old school, new stuff if I can get it. But I have a pretty cool collection of vinyls.
Yeah. I like that.
So I go vinyl hunting quite a bit.
Excellent. Okay. Last rapid question is, what's the best piece of advice you would have for someone who's interested in pursuing a career in public service?
Easiest question that you have so far. The best piece of advice is to always buck the trends. I think a lot of people are going to tell you how to do this work, what you should be doing, how they did it. But how they did it isn't necessarily the political reality of the world that we live in today. So you have your finger on the pulse, be who you are, authentically, boldly, confidently, and lead on behalf of those who you represent.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. And again, I've had the fortune and the real privilege to watch you and be able to work with you on some matters as a legislator. And what I appreciate is that you are genuine. Your word is true. You have integrity, and you're honest. And I think that's what resonates with the folks you represent. And that's what makes you someone that we're really just happy to have in the legislature going to bat for us. So
thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you, Representative Paris. It's always great talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Office Hours. I'm Terrence Cheng, Chancellor of the CSCU system. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and listen in to future episodes where we discuss the importance of higher education and why higher education should be a part of Connecticut's growth strategy with state and business leaders and students and faculty.